Hello. Welcome to another CISSP study hour. Though I guess technically it's lunchtime, so welcome to lunchtime. And I'm not eating right now, but I'm eating at the amount of knowledge that I need to pass the CISSP exam. My name is Michael Buckby. I did have my CISSP, then I let it lapse, so I need to retake the test. So I'm studying and very excited to have everyone here to study along with me. We're going to be working through the Quizlet, which was official documentation put out from the ISC. So let's go ahead and get started. And my thought for today was that we should do two sets of knowledge. One is a set of acronyms. So I took a peek through these. It's a mix of both technical acronyms, but also a lot of business acronyms. Hey, everybody in the chat. Morning for me, but good afternoon for you. Almir, 8-Bit, Thor, Uma Venkat Kaja. Very cool. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I looked through this. It's a lot of acronyms that are very enterprisey, if that makes sense. But I think they're still very useful, especially if you're in a role where you've been in smaller organizations and now you're moving up to an international organization, or you've been in smaller organizations that have not had, things spread out everywhere. It can be real off-putting if someone says like, oh, here's our XYZ things that are happening here, but you don't know what it is. So I'm going to run through these and then after this, do something more like what we normally do where it's more one of the actual CBKs. So as always, encourage people in the chat to throw out answers. I'll try to go slow to deal with the lag. And whoever does the best, Veronis, our sponsor, will send you a cool mug. I'm going to try to hold the mug properly. It's a actual Yeti mug, and it keeps your coffee so hot it's very hard to drink for hours. If that's of interest to you, throw your answers in the chat, and then whoever does the best, we're pretty loose with the definition of best, but whoever does the best, we can send you one of the mugs. All right, so let's get started. What does CPE stand for? Side note, Veronis has a lot of webinars and a lot of free courses and stuff. If you need CPEs, like I should have been getting CPEs to keep your certification, then you can attend some of those. Just go to veronis.com, I think /resources. It's in the menu. There's a bunch of stuff. Or sign up on any of the web pages. There's a ton of things. So this is continuing professional education. And so you need these hours to stack up. I think a cool trick, if it's still the case, is that a lot of the security podcasts, if you listen to them and you document it, count as CPEs, which is good because, go for a walk, driving in your car, listen to podcasts, get some CPEs. ISSA. I know she had a show on HBO. I'm trying to think what it is. Information Security Systems Architect, maybe the real term here. An 8-Bit, the only one answering. System Security Association. Whoa. Started talking when I highlighted. That's scary. ISA, Information Systems Security Association. Okay. AMF. I want to say monetary fund. That's probably not right. Association of Meteoric Failures. No, I don't know what this is. Annual maintenance fee. Like it's a golf course. If everyone would prefer we just jump right to the other stuff and skip these, we can do that. Or maybe I'll just try to burn through these real quick. ISC squared, International Information System Security Consortium. I actually forgot that one, which seems really dumb, but hey, I'm dumb too sometimes. Information Security Consortium. Yeah. Sean saying, and Sean, CISSP in his title. Absolutely pro move, Sean. Lots of providers out there as well. Get your CPEs registered, provide them with your membership ID. Yeah, so I know Veronis, there's actually in a lot of the forms actually say like put your membership ID and just so they can automatically put in if you ever get audited for stuff. AMF was a bowling alley. Yeah, that's about where I'm at too. All right, ISACA, International Systems Architect for Computer Association. Information Systems. I used to use Information Systems Architecture Community. Systems Audit and Control Association. I don't actually know if these are like actual associations with like board members and stuff or if it's something else, but all right. Oh. Sounds like a song lyric. Oh. But I think this is out of office. This is kind of a weird collection of acronyms. All right. I know this one. Anyone else familiar with this? I'll give you a hint. It's not directly security related. I actually hear it most of the time in terms of like sales regions. And I will give partial credit for any portion of this if someone can get to it. So. No one's answering in chat. So I'm just going to say it's the Latin America region. And I do think this is the kind of stuff where it's important to know sort of as like the background context for how business is done that you can then translate into your security work. Like an example, I know it was the big credit scoring breach. Was that Experian? I think it was actually their Latin American server that was breached as the entry point. And so a lot of times organizations are, split along these lines. Where there's different sets of personnel and different policies in the different regions. So it's very good to know. So Sscp. I think this is actually an organization in the Hellboy universe, but not entirely sure. But I think in our universe, it's System Security Certified Professional. APAC. Another region, this is Asian Pacific. I'm just going to burn through these. USGAC, so U.S. Government Authority of Control, Advisory Council. All right. CISSP, Certified Information System Security Professional. Hey, what we're trying for. Okay. DOD, Department of Defense. GISLA, Government Information Systems. Something Leadership Award. Stuff like this is tricky because when I hear GIS, and this is going to talk again, but GIS, I think they're like Geographic Information Systems, but so much of this test is non-technical. So CSSLP, Certified Security Systems Legal Lifecycle, Certified Secure Software Lifecycle Professional. I'll be honest, I didn't even know that was a thing. ISSAP, Security Architecture Professional, SSO, Single Sign-On, Safe and Secure Online. That does not seem like it's the actual thing. ANSI, American National Standards Institute, CIB Los Angeles, Candidate Information Bulletin. I don't know about some of these. Common Body of Knowledge, CBK, HIPAA, Health Information Privacy, Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Healthcare Insurance Portability Act. EMEA, another region. This is European, Middle East, and Africa. Patriot Act, U.S. government, set of regulations. JTA, Job Task Analysis. Oh my gosh. ISO, Information Security International Standards Organization. Oh gosh. DCO, Detailed Content Online. SOX, this is Sarbanes-Oxley, Data Regulations for Financial Organizations. OTP, Official Training Provider. That was not what I thought. I thought it was one-time password. ITPG, IT Professional Group. LMS, Learning Management System. CAP, Certified Authorization Professional. Universal Administration. You know what? I'm just going to bail on these. All right. Okay, let's shuffle this. Okay, so this is, I believe, systems engineering body of knowledge. And this should be more what we're trying to figure out here. All right, so this is, this flipped, involves the removal of characteristics from an entity in order to easily represent its essential properties. That's an abstraction. Let's go. Let's flip these. So we're starting with, okay, the reverse process from encoding, converting the encoded message back into its plain text format. That is decoding, which we saw. All right, and now I'm going to slow down so people can maybe actually answer. All right, provides a foundation upon which organizations can establish and review information technology security programs. A foundation upon which, so this is some, you know, the term that's usually used is like manager perspective for this. So this is some abstracted term for providing a foundation upon which organizations can establish and review information technology security programs, like an authorization board or governance program or something like that. Go with governance. Oh, generally accepted principles and practices for securing information technology systems. All right. All right, an architecture content framework to describe standard building blocks and components as well as numerous reference models. Architecture, I don't know what this is. The Open Architecture Framework, TOGAF. I mean, it sounds like an alien creature, a TOGAF, but the Open Architecture Framework. All right. A structured methodology for documenting security requirements, documenting and validating security capabilities, and promoting international cooperation in the area of IT security. I don't think like this is an ISO standard, but common criteria. Oh, interesting. All right. The process of exchanging one letter or byte for another. Come on, someone can answer this one. At least take a guess. At this point, any guess would actually almost get you the mug. So, pretty good time to guess. Exchanging one letter or byte for another. I'm going to go with transposing. Substitution. I got too fancy with it. Substitution. All right. When a crypto system performs its encryption on a bit-by-bit basis, crypto system performs its encryption on a bit-by-bit basis. Encoding? I don't think it's encoding, though that's a good guess. Because I think of encoding like you could encode an entire string. I think this is my guess, and this is actually a guess, is it streaming? Yeah, stream-based ciphers. And the big difference there is that if you imagine it's 1,000 characters that are coming into you, like an efficient way of doing that is like not even just encryption, but like compression. If there's like 10 zeros in a row, like you could imagine making a marker that says like, hey, the next 10 characters are all a zero. And that is taking things as a whole. So usually it's blocks that, you know, you would chop that 1,000 characters up into blocks of 100 and then see if there's patterns within that or blocks of 10. It's not exactly how it works, but it's an abstraction to talk about it. Versus a streaming cipher, which is really just looking at each individual bit as it comes through. And a lot of times you can imagine that these things are very context specific, like what you want to use, like depending upon the length of data and what's happening with it. All right. Stores data that has a high probability of being requested by the CPU. All right, so some form of caching. And so it's like, where is it cached? I'm going to guess being cached L1 cache. primary storage. Come on, CISSP. That's even two manager speak for me. All right. Yeah. Pranay said cache. That was my guess as well. But it says storage. That's weird. I feel like we're right with cache. An interoperable authentication protocol based on the OAuth 2 family of specifications. Interoperable authentication protocol based on the OAuth 2 family of specifications. While we're trying to think of this, just as a comment, OAuth 2, I have a background in web development, and I had implemented a number of systems on OAuth 1, which was a huge pain. And OAuth 2 was actually like one of those few times when they're like this, the second version of it just seemed to get everything right. And it was really interesting because the whole reason they were able to make it so much simpler was they're like, we're just going to go ahead and assume you have, SSL for all your connections. And they were able to just like chunk out a huge amount of the work you had to do for OAuth 1. OAuth 2, like implementing it from scratch even, not even using like a library or something, is really easy. So I think this is OpenID, but I don't actually know. It might be SAML is the other one. OpenID Connect. SAML's a different specification, but all right. And OpenID isn't really used that much anymore, I don't think. So, all right. But 8-bit got it. OpenID provides the security architect with a framework of specifications to ensure the safe processing, storing, and transmission of cardholder information. So I think the key here is this cardholder information, that this is very specifically dealing with one framework for, handling this stuff. Like anytime you deal with card transactions, credit cards, financial stuff, this comes into play. I'm going to go with PCI, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS. Yeah, and so how most places, they dread doing this, so they get around it by like using Stripe. And if you use like Stripe Connect or something, you don't have to do it. But if you do, hey, there's a good 6 months to a year of work to meet that standard. All right, smart network systems with embedded sensors, processors, and actuators that are designed to sense and interact with the physical world and support real-time guaranteed performance in safety-critical applications. Smart network systems. I go real-time? What's this support real-time guaranteed performance? Smart systems? Cyber physical systems. That doesn't sound like a thing. Cyber physical systems? Weird. Okay, well, I learned something new. That's what they're called. That's what the Terminator gets. Yes. Yeah. Defines the organizational structure and skill requirements of an IT organization, as well as the set of operational procedures and practices that direct IT operations and infrastructure, including information security operations. Okay, so governance is what I always go to because I always forget to say governance. It defines the organizational structure and skill requirements. How does the HR function? Defines the organizational employment requirements. IT infrastructure library. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but okay. All right. Maintains activities at different security levels to separate these levels from each other. Separation of concerns. Activities at different security levels. Need to know. Data hiding. Maintains activities at different. I wouldn't have described it that way, but okay. All right. Dividing a computer's memory into segments. We talked earlier about like stream versus block. Maybe that's what this is. Computer's memory into segments. Segmented memory. Hi. Comet. I think it's spelled Comet. C0M3T. Segmentation. That would certainly be it. Segmentation. All right. Yeah, 8-bit only said blocks. I thought the same thing. A small block of data that is generated using a secret key and then appended to the message. I feel like this one people will know. I think I know what it is. Just imagine like the Jeopardy music in your head as you're typing out what the answer to this is. Generated using a secret key then appended to the message. All right, no one's saying that. I think it's nonce. Oh no, message authentication code, a MAC. Small block of data. Hey, 8-bit got it. 8-bit, can I ask you, what is the difference between a MAC and a nonce? All right, small block of data is generated using a secret key then appended to the message. Message authentication code. All right, keep going. Attempt to take advantage of how a system handles multiple requests. Take advantage of how a system handles multiple requests. Hey, I Google stuff all the time. Well, Google Mac versus nonce and see what it says. All right. Attempt to take advantage of how a system handles multiple requests. Sometimes these like jump to like a DDoS, but that doesn't sound right. Multiple requests, like a difference, a timing attack, state attacks. So in different systems. It's not. I feel like this would need to say like with different parameters, where you can imagine like what actually is a state attack. Like a lot of times there's like, to my mind, I think of like timing attacks. Like there's a lot of interesting things around like HSTS, which is security headers in web browsers that interact with other sites. And they do caching. So you can tell in some cases, like there's practical things for this. Like, have you visited a site before because of the certain way it loads? Like, oh, and there's ways you could like fingerprint people with that. And so that is that is the practical implementation of a state attack, where you have a previously visited and never visited state, or you have a logged in and an on a person who's not logged in state, and you're able to then sort out what is happening with that. All right. Describes the behavior of a system as it moves between one state and another from one moment to another. Maybe this is timing attacks? State machine model. The behavior of a system as it moves between one state and another from one moment to another. I think what throws me off here is this from one moment to another. Certainly moving between states. And if you're not familiar with state machines, a state machine is like a more complete way of expressing a set of actions that, if you were really thinking about it, is almost like an if-then. So normally when you implement a state machine in code, it's something that says like, hey, when we move from X state to Y state, take these actions. And when you move from Y state to X state, take these other actions. And the easiest thing to think about is something like a login. So when someone logs into a system, there's a bunch of actions that need to take place, and the state of that user and that login changes from, say, anonymous to authenticated. So the list of actions might be like, well, we're going to write to the database what IP address that they came in with. We're going to write down the time that they came in with. We're going to give them a token that lets them then access everything they're authorized to when they touch these other systems. So that's what a state machine is. I guess I don't quite understand the moment to another part of this, where I would think that's a timing thing, that's something separate, but that's what a state machine is. And they're used a lot in both in terms of like thinking about information architecture, as well as there's a lot of like any development framework usually has some way of implementing state machines. All right. All right. Provides a set of generally accepted processes to assist in maximizing the benefits derived using information technology and developing appropriate IT governance. Generally accepted processes to assist in maximizing the benefits derived. Data governance, control objects for information and related technology, COBIT. Oh gosh, I had no idea that's what that was. All right. Operate with a single cryptographic key that is used for both encryption and decryption of the message. All right. I know someone's got to know this one. So I'll give you a hint. It's either symmetric or asymmetric. So, all right. Honoring says, I am new here, so you can tell me what we're doing here. Sure. So there is a certification called the CISSP. Yeah, Pranay got it. It's symmetric. So we're studying for that. There's a lot of kind of weirdness with the CISSP where it is very abstracted from normal IT practices, where if you're actually working in an organization, either like trying to defend against attacks or doing pen tests or, even just as an IT sysadmin, how you express and you think about most of this stuff is in very practical terms. Oftentimes either very like vendor specific terms like Microsoft terms or, Cisco, Juniper, whatever networking terms, or in terms of like what systems you have, like whether it's a Linux system or, a Mac or something. And so the CISSP tries to get you to think about all of that from the outside, to think about this in very abstracted terms, where if you went into any organization at any level, you'd be able to like point out these different things. And 8-bit Oni, don't care about spelling. That's not part of the test. It's multiple choice. Symmetric's great. However it's spelled. Yeah. So one of the things that is covered in that is encryption and decryption, how that works. And this is symmetric algorithms. So anytime it's using the same key for both encryption and decryption, it is symmetric. The other characteristic of symmetric encryption stuff is typically much faster. So a lot of times even systems that use asymmetric encryption, they'll use that to start, and what they actually end up swapping is a symmetric key. And that's how like HTTPS works, that when you connect to a site with HTTPS, the initial handshake and everything is with asymmetric, because you're pulling down the public key of the site and you're using that for everything. I wouldn't say it's less or more secure, but it's a different purpose, and you need to use the right thing for the right stuff. So like I was saying, so the initial interaction with a website over HTTPS is asymmetric, but then it shares a symmetric key that is then used for everything else because it's so much faster. All right. This represents the total number of possible values of keys in a cryptographic algorithm or other security measure, such as a password. All right, the total number of possible values of keys. I'm going to go with key space, brute force. I would say it's key space. Yeah, key space. All right. A service that ensures the sender cannot deny a message was sent and the integrity of the message is intact. Kind of like TCP versus UDP, not the same, just analogy. Yeah, I mean, different systems for different purposes. So, okay, a service that ensures the sender cannot deny a message was sent and the integrity of the message is intact. So I don't know exactly what they're getting here. Usually anytime it gets into this, it's, in the realm of this, it's has to do with using one-way hash algorithms. So you can take a message and you can, hash it and get a value out. And if any part of it changes, that signature changes. And that's used that's used in a lot of the asymmetric, like if you're actually trying to implement, like sat down with a pen and paper to implement, that's what you need to do. So I think this is non-repudiation. So this is how that's implemented, that, you know, and so this happens with, like there's been cases with Gmail where there's a system in Gmail, and all email providers called like DKIM, which, you know, Google changes their keys over time. And so there's been cases where like a politician does something scummy and they're sending emails out to, you know, people they shouldn't be, with content that shouldn't be in them. And then, you know, it turns out it comes out years later, and then they sit back and they go, oh, it was made up. I never sent that email. Well, in the email, there's a header, and in that header is one of these values. And so that proves, quote unquote, in the same way, that the message was actually sent from that account at that time. And so that's what non-repudiation is, that you can't just claim like, oh yeah, people broke into my account and sent that and it's just made up. All right. All right. The science that deals with hidden, disguised, or encrypted communications. It embraces communications security and communications intelligence. All right. So it's the science. So it doesn't mean probably. So it's looking for a very abstracted term. So I think this is probably going to be like cryptography, hidden, disguised, or encrypted communication. So I think that's cryptography, embraces the security and intelligence. I don't know about this part. The security makes sense. Intelligence might be something else. Cryptology. We're going to find out in like 4 questions. Cryptography is something else. The distinction. All right. Provided by mixing up the location of the plain text throughout the ciphertext. Obfuscation. I think you're actually jumping the gun. Well, that's close. Mixing up the location of the plain text throughout the ciphertext. I don't know. Bit churning, something. Diffusion. All right. I didn't know that's what that was called. That's cool. All right. This represents the time and effort required to break a protective measure. The weakness time, the minimum time. MTBF is like minimum time between failures. I mean, this is something similar. Time and effort. The work factor. Okay. Time and effort required to break protective measure. All right, that makes sense. And I guess that would encompass both like one system working on it versus 1,000 systems working on it. That, you know. All right. A small representation of a larger message. Message digests are used to ensure the authentication and integrity of information, not the confidentiality. So I think this is a signature. Like we're talking about like digital signature. A message digest. Which is it's in the definition here, which is what threw me off. But I mean, how that's achieved is with a one-way hash. That's how you get the message digest signature. All right. The process of reordering the plain text to hide the message. I think it said obfuscation, transposition. I thought it was obfuscation. Probably said salting. I apologize. I looked away. I don't even know which one that's for. All right. A connectivity software that enables multiple processes running on one or more machines to interact. That enables multiple processes. Some form of communication? Pipeline? It's a software. Enables multiple processes. Pipelining? This is when I feel like who knows what they're asking for. All right. Connectivity software that enables multiple processes. Inter-process communications, IPC, networking. Maybe I was making it too complicated. API's going to ask me networking. Middleware. Not how I would describe that at all, but okay. Connectivity software that enables multiple processes. Well, this is why we're studying. These are interesting terms. All right. Routing, also a good term. All right. The core of an OS and one of its main functions is to provide access to systems resources, which include the system's hardware and processes. Asking for the kernel? Core of an OS. Core of an OS. I'm assuming this is the kernel. System kernel. Yeah. All right. Accepts an input message of any length and generates through a one-way operation a fixed length output. So Pranay said firmware, which was a good guess, but that's not, I guess that's a good question. What's the difference? So firmware is where the software runs and maybe not actually what the software is, if that makes sense. At least that's how I think of it. All right, accepts an input message of any length and generates through a one-way operation a fixed length output. So this is a hash function. Hash function. All right, an area or grouping within which a defined set of security policies and measures are applied to achieve a specific level of security. Like security group, security zone of control. It's a fancy way of saying security group. All right, a nonprofit organization focused on improving the security of software. Nonprofit organization focused on improving the security of software. I don't think it's just ISC. ISO? OWASP. That's funny. So this is the Open Web Application Security Project. I'm very familiar with them. They, but I get, and what throws me here is the security of software had me thinking more like enterprise software and not just web. And OWASP was very much web. I really like, they put out a yearly report that is really a survey. And they just go through and they ask like people that run big web applications, hey, what are you most concerned about this past year? Like, what did you see the most often? And comes back with like, here's the top 10 list of the most, the items of most concern to the people, which is great because so much of the security stuff, like the CISSP, is impractical, that it's too abstract, that it's too removed from the actual reality of doing things. But the OWASP top 10 is the opposite. It is the thing that keeps people up at night. And it's great because there's so few things that let you really prioritize what to work on. But if you have a web application, it is so nice to be able to like, you know, show other stakeholders, to show like the C-suite and the organization, like, hey, here's what, you know, everyone else in the world who has these same concerns is thinking about, and here's how they prioritize it. And they prioritize like, you know, code injection attacks or, you know, impersonation issues or DDoS. And to see that and to say like, all right, here's our checklist. We can just work our way down this to improve our security. So this is a tremendously great project that I think everyone should take a look at. So, all right. An XML-based standard used to exchange authentication and authorization information. I'm going to give everyone a chance here because I think some people might know this. An XML-based standard used to exchange authentication and authorization information. And I think it's SAML, but if not, I think I'm close. Let's see. Yeah, Security Assertion Markup Language. I wouldn't have been able to tell you that's what it stands for, but that's what it is. So if you use a vendor like Okta or something that does single sign-on, this is sort of the underpinning of like how all those organizations are tied together. They use SAML. So, all right. One-way functions, that is a process that is much simpler to go in one direction forward than to go in the other direction, backward or reverse engineering. So these are hash functions. I was going to say that. Asymmetric algorithms. I guess hash functions are asymmetric algorithms. Yeah, that's not a term that gets used much, but that absolutely is the case. That, in the same way we talked about the different types of encryption, same thing. All right. Communications mechanisms hidden from the access control and standard monitoring systems of an information system. Hidden control mechanisms. Covert channels. I would not have gotten that. Yeah, so 8-bit saying like Salesforce uses SAML. They do. All right. Holistic lifecycle for developing security architecture that begins with assessing business requirements and subsequently creating a chain of traceability through the phases of strategy, concept, design, implementation, and metrics. Is this ISO? The Sherwood Applied Business Security Architecture Framework. I did not know that. Sherwood Applied Business Security Framework. Very Robin Hood of them. All right. The message in its natural format. It's a weird way of phrasing that. The message in its natural format. Unencrypted. Plain text. Starting. Plain text. Okay. The message in its natural format. This is one of those legacy things where, I think when the CISSP and when a lot of these concepts were laid down, the internet was a lot more text than it wasn't. And so, and even now when things are encrypted and a lot of things are like base 64 encoded, like you can take an image, a JPEG is not text. Like you can't open it in a text editor and change it without really screwing things up. That it's a binary format. But you can base 64 encode something, and when you do that, it really changes it into text, more or less, which could then be encrypted. And that's an aspect of a lot of these systems, even if it is something else, is that encoding step. And so this is still the case, even though it's saying the message, which might be something else entirely, is still considered plain text. So, all right. This model focuses on preventing conflict of interest when a given subject has access to objects with sensitive information associated with two competing parties. I think the term is firewall. I think the sort of antiquated term is Chinese firewall, where it's almost like there's a demilitarized zone in between things. I remember, I think in the days of Microsoft and Apple competing a lot more, that there were working groups of Apple engineers and Microsoft engineers working together, and the rest of the company couldn't know what they were working on. So, Brewer Nash, the Chinese wall model. Yeah. I didn't know Brewer Nash. I mean, this is again, I said the old term, the Chinese wall model. Okay. Involves randomly arranging the positions of key data areas in a program, including the base of the executable and the positions of the stack, heap, and libraries in the process's memory address space. I don't know. Churning. Diffusion is the term that came up previously. Go with diffusion. Address space layout randomization. ASLR. We're so close to being, a lady that brushes her hair on YouTube for millions of views. Okay. The study of techniques for attempting to defeat cryptographic techniques and more generally information security services. Attempting to defeat cryptographic techniques more generally. So it's the study of these techniques. Maybe this is cryptography? Yeah, Derek's saying ASR. I think it's for the ASMR. It's the nice, lo-fi music kind of sounds. the white noise sounds. All right, the study of techniques for attempting to defeat cryptographic techniques and more cryptanalysis. All right, so cryptology was the science of all of this. Cryptanalysis, which is a hard word to say for some reason. Cryptanalysis is trying to break them. 8-bit saying brute force, which is the implementation of that. And probably not actually cryptanalysis. That's just brute forcing it. Just brute forcing it. All right. The non-secret binary vector used as an initializing input algorithm for the encryption of a plain text block sequence to increase security by introducing additional cryptographic variants into synchronized cryptographic equipment. The non-secret binary vector. Binary vector. There's a lot of words in here. Initializing encryption of a plain text block. My mind goes to salt. Like, the salt is usually like the extra piece of information that is used when encrypting something to make it more difficult to decrypt. I don't know that that's a binary vector or exactly what that means. The initialization vector. Yeah. Defeat crypt. Yeah, man, this one just blew me out of the water. All right, initialization vector. All right. In this model, the cloud infrastructure is provisioned for exclusive use by a single organization comprising multiple consumers. Provision for exclusive use by a single organization comprising multiple consumers. So I think it's describing something like shared hosting, but would it be single host, bare metal hosting? Provision for exclusive use. Private hosting? The term is like right on the edge of my head. Multi-tenant? I think it'd be single tenant, right there? Because at least in terms of like how the question's answered, VM. Private cloud. Yeah. We were too on the nose with our answers. Just not abstract enough. Like, and usually private cloud is like virtual private cloud stuff. Like, that's an actual AWS term, VPC, where they give you both like a network setup and then a certain set of resources within it. But yeah. All right. A broad range of technologies that grant control and protection to content providers over their own digital media. All right. I think people may know this one. If you're old like me, this goes all the way back to like Napster and stuff. It's the reason sometimes you can't like copy your files from your, I guess maybe they took it off now. I don't know. I think it's DRM. Yeah, digital rights management. Hey, but got it. DRM. All right. A model for enabling ubiquitous, convenient, on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources. Yeah, 8-bit says games do this for the DRM. Yeah. To a shared pool of configurable computing resources, networks, storage, application services can be rapidly provisioned and released with minimal management. I think this is just cloud computing. All right. Yeah. What time is it? Oh, it's already 12:49. All right. So we've only made it through like half of these questions. So we're going to need to go quicker here. All right. A repository for information collected from a variety of data sources. A database? Data warehouse? Data warehouse. Data warehouse is the biggest term, but there's also like data lakes, data pools, any body of water, data streams. I don't know the definitions between those, but we'll figure it out. Provision for exclusive use by a single specific community of consumers from organizations that have shared concerns. Multi-tenant? Community cloud infrastructure. I would like Derek's answer of multi-tenant from earlier. So, community cloud. All right. The size of a key usually measured in bits or bytes, which a cryptographic algorithm used in ciphering or deciphering protected information. I think this is just key size. Key length. Okay. The size, documentation, and management of the lowest layer of the OSI network model, the physical layer. Physical security? Cable plant management. All right. Divides physical memory up into blocks of a particular size, each of which has an associated numerical value called a protection key. Secure computing? Protection keying. All right, a composition of two or more distinct cloud infrastructures, private, community, or public, that remain unique entities but are bound together by standardized proprietary technology that enables data and application portability. Multi-cloud? Hybrid cloud infrastructure. That's not exactly what I would call hybrid cloud infrastructure. Hey, Derek. Netbox is a great open source tool for that. Cool. Oh, this is tiny print. An electronic document that contains the name of an organization or individual, the business address, the digital signature of the certificate authority issuing the certificate holder's public key, a serial number, and an expiration date. This sure seems like it's describing public key certificates, but on-prem versus cloud. Digital certificate, yeah. And for what it's worth, in almost all cases now, almost all this information can be so easily faked it's worthless. So, all right. Provided by mixing, changing the key values used during the repeated rounds of encryption, when the key is modified for each round, it provides added complexity that the attacker would encounter. I think this is key mixing, key rotation, confusion. Well, certainly confusing me. All right. Divides the memory address space into an equal size block called pages. I think it's just memory paging. Yeah, okay. The ability to deduce and infer sensitive or restricted information from observing available information. Data leakage? Data leakage? Public key was private? Inference. Yeah, inference. That's what it is. All right, a security model describes strict layers of subjects and objects and defines clear rules that allow or disallow interactions between them based on the layers they are in. Multi-level lattice models? No idea about that. Mathematical function is used in the encryption and decryption process. Hash function? Algorithm. I just love hash functions too much. All right. Provide authentication of a sender and integrity of a sender's message. This is signature? Digital signatures? All right. When different encryption keys generate the same ciphertext from the same plaintext message. Key collision? Key clustering. All right. Holds data not currently being used by the CPU and is used when data must be stored for an extended period of time using high capacity non-volatile storage. Memory? Not currently being used by the CPU. Earlier it said primary storage. I think this is secondary storage. Yeah, secondary storage. All right. This performs certificate registration services on behalf of a CA. Certificate server? Registration authority, which would be a certificate server. So a certificate authority is, if you've encountered them, that is like the highest level of things. So like the very common ones are like DigiCert, GeoTrust, like they're all owned by each other now. The other big one that's out there now is Let's Encrypt. A lot of people are familiar with Let's Encrypt. So the root certificate authorities are the organizations responsible for at some level saying that, hey, this certificate is valid. That's still a weird kind of infrastructure in the modern day where there is very little done now in terms of making sure that that's the case. And almost it would be better to self-sign certificates. But that's what a certificate authority is. A lot of times in enterprises, an enterprise will set up their own certificate authority, like their own Let's Encrypt ACM or whatever else, to spit out certs for all their servers internally because they don't want to go out and buy them. And there's different systems for that. And so this registration authority would be the internal server where that happens, where you can submit them and get them back. And 8-bit saying a pain in the butt. He is, or she, I don't know. They are right. It's a pain in the butt. All right. The storage of programs or instructions in ROM. So not RAM. Firmware. All right. Look at this. We're coming back around. Who was it that said firmware earlier? Pranay. Pranay said firmware earlier. Pranay can see the future. Excellent work, Pranay. All right. The altered form of a plain text message so as to be unreadable for anyone except the intended recipients. Altered form of a plain text message. Substitution cipher? Encoded, encrypted? Cipher text or cryptogram. This is a weird way of saying they encrypted the message. Focused on setting the long-term strategy for security services, enterprise security architecture, describes the essential characteristics of an organization's security engineering process that must exist to ensure good security engineering. ISO. And running out of time here because I got to run. An entity trusted by one or more users as an authority. This is certificate authority. Used to provide computing services in small form factor with limited processing. Small form factor? Embedded systems? I feel like even small form factor means like it's a cigarette case computer versus like embedded systems is like literally a chip that's inside like a machine or something. All right. Combining non-sensitive data from separate sources to create sensitive information. Data combining, aggregation. All right. Provision for open use by the general public. Open source, public cloud infrastructure. All right. The action of changing a message into another format. Encoding. Yeah, I like thin clients. Two-dimensional table that allows for individual subjects and objects to be related to each other. A matrix. Access control matrix. Logical structure for identifying and organizing the models that are important in the management. Automated manual. The Zachman framework did not know that. Explores the rules that would have to be in place if a subject is granted a certain level of clearance in a particular mode of access. Provisioning. The Bell Lapadula model. How subjects and objects are created. Governance. Graham Denning. Man, I don't know any of these. Use control industrial processes such as manufacturing, product handling, industrial control systems. All right. That was a tough one. There was a lot today. Just want to say thank you to everyone who came by today. I hope you are finding this useful. And I don't know if it's the lag, but 8-Bit just said no, he's not finding it useful. As we did this, but thanks for showing up anyway. I appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great weekend. Keep studying, and we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot. Bye.